I've lived in Yeovil all my life, and I would like to talk about the gloving industry. Well, what I know anyhow. My father was a glove cutter. Um, he he was apprenticed at Whitbreeze, and unfortunately he's not around anymore. And he was 35 years in the gloving industry, and he also worked in various other glove factories. At one time, Yeovil had about 40 glove factories in its heyday, and gradually they decreased, especially from the 1960s. Um, and I would say at one time, three-quarters of the population were employed in the gloving industry, men and women machinists, as well as people taking work home, machinists mainly.
Because your mother worked from home, didn't she?
That's right. My mother also worked from home as a machinist, and she worked in a factory called Taverners, which was situated at one time in Eastern Road. The building is still standing, and is now called Thorns, which deals in tobacco and chocolates, etc., sweets.
So what would the scene have been like at these glove factories? Because, I mean, presumably they were made out of hide and things like that, were they?
Yes. Different sections the glove factory had skin yard, up to the processing stage, right up to the cleaner jobs, which was obviously the glove cut inside, the women doing the machining of the gloves. The skin yards were very dirty, where you had acid, which was smelt and was dangerous. Basically, it was a very dirty, mucky job. And you could smell the glove factories from quite a distance away. The gloving output was basically the gloves were sold up and down the country. But as time went by, they were imported to places like Japan. And the third world countries stepped in, were selling cheaper gloves. And now, unfortunately, there's only two glove factories in Yeovil, which is Pittards and Stirling's, which is up Reckerford. All the rest have gone. There are a few glove factories outside of Yeovil. Not many now, about half a dozen. The main glove factories were in a place called Adderwell Lane, which now there's nothing down there much. One of the old glove factories is still standing, which used to be called Clover and Giles, but now it deals in Honda motor cars, and it's called Ash of Yeovil. All the rest have long gone, the majority have been demolished or converted into other industries. Most of the gloving factories were situated near water. That is why they were down Adderwell Lane in Yeovil, because there was Dodden Brook down there, and it was ideal for the gloving industry.
Was it the cheaper imports then that finally killed them off?
Yes, cheap labour, cheap imports that virtually killed the trade in this country. The English glove, manufacture in this country was far too dear. And of course, the labour, that was cheap in the third world countries.
I mean, with so many people employed in the gloving industry, their closure must have had a devastating impact on Yeovil.
It did, yes. The thing is that, most of the people, they didn't know anything else, they didn't know any other trade, they were left school, went into the gloving industry, and obviously retired, and then their children went in the gloving industry, etc. So yes, it did. It put a lot of people out of work, and as I said, they didn't know anything else, near the gloving industry. Unfortunately.
Was it a possibility for you to follow your father into the industry?
Well, my father never wanted me to go into the gloving industry. In later life, he got out of it himself. He was dead against it. He wanted me to do something better, and I went into the motor industry, which was a big thing at one time. No, he was dead against that,
But that was generally what people did. It was a family tradition, was it?
Yes, grandfathers, then their father, right the way down, their sons, daughters. because there wasn't much employment around. That was, the main industry, apart from shops and other factories, making various things. But the gloving was the main thing, well, apart from the railway, of course, things like that.
With so many processes and chemicals involved, was health and safety very high on the agenda, do you think?
Not years ago, no, because somebody I know who was in the gloving industry actually joined the union, well, formed the union, and went to the boss about conditions, etc. And it was a very bad atmosphere early days of unions, because a lot of people were scared to join because they're afraid they lose their job, type of thing. And they daren't say to the boss, about conditions, going back years ago, because, the unions were not so strong and they'd be just forced out of their job, and very bad. I'll give you one example. One lady told me that there was a towel for washing your hands in a certain glove factory, and it wasn't changed from the Monday to the Friday. And by the Friday, it was black. That's just one example of how it used to be. And that was a lady who was a machinist.
So a lot of people must have suffered illness and ill health generally.
Yes. One of the worst things was dermatitis, I believe, which was a constant problem, because your hands were in water and you had to be careful of acid, etc. And dermatitis was one of the main problems, and of course, in another part of the industry, breathing, because you had fibres going in the air with what they called lambskins. So you had like particles of wool, and you could see it with the windows. I've been in the factory with my father, and the windows, you could actually see the particles of wool like in the air. Obviously people were breathing that in.
Did things ever improve before?
Oh yes, they improved, from around about the 50s onwards, because health and safety eventually come along, but they did improve, things like better washing facilities, restrooms, better places to eat your food, etc. Lighting. Another thing, a lot of the glove factories were always dark, dim, dingy, dark places, and so the lighting improved,
So, it's sad to see them go?
Well, I think it's part of the heritage of this area, this town, and the buildings had a bit of character, but a lot of them, as I say, were dirty, and it was good to see them go, really, and they stunk, but it's a shame, really, that one or two of the better ones were not preserved.